Giving money away does not come easily to me. After a meal out, it's usually my wife who nudges me into leaving a tip. I, by contrast, can be slow to remember. It rarely occurs to me to buy an unplanned gift to mark a birthday or a milestone. I can't help comparing myself unfavourably with my late mother. She was always quick to offer food, but not money, to the occasional tramp who knocked at the back door. When I decline an appeal, I sometimes justify myself by saying, "Well, I've already given regularly to my chosen charity." But is that really enough, or am I deep down a little stingy? Not mean-spirited, exactly, just reluctant to share. And if so, might that reluctance be affecting not only my relationships, but my own inner well-being? I guess I'm interested in cultivating a spirit of generosity. What do I mean by this? It's not simply handing over money, it's a disposition, an impulse to do good without expectation of reward. Dolly Parton once said, "The funny thing is, the poorer people are, the more generous they seem to be." And I think she may be right. An attitude that transcends outer circumstances is so relevant. The mystic Emanuel Swedenborg, who lived in the 18th century, he described one of his visions. He said he had a vision of a man after the man's death in the afterlife. And in that sphere, in that subspace, after receiving a kindness, he immediately wanted to repay it. That instinct, wanting to return goodness with goodness, was the fruit of a lifetime lived with a generous heart. But what's stopping any of us feeling this way? Obstacles seem to abound. First, consumerism tempts us to clutch tightly what we have or chase after more. The strange irony is, however, that such desires can never be satisfied. I think consumerism also tempts us to feel envy. If we hear that our friends enjoyed a wonderful holiday or put a new addition on their home, we might not feel so happy for them because we want what they have for ourselves. This envy can sour our joy in the good fortune of others. Another obstacle for learning generosity is our modern way of life, where even time becomes a commodity. It is packed into diaries, rationed out in 10-minute slots, as we rush to complete the endless activities we feel compelled to do. In such a climate of pursuing social status, security, success for our pet projects, suspending what we are doing and being generous with our time can feel like a sacrifice. Our lives are filled to the brim with things to do, and no spare time available for someone who might actually appreciate our attention for a few minutes at least. Yet, having said that, some people do seem to have more of a natural empathy for those they meet, readily stopping what they are doing and having a spontaneous way of giving their time and energy. Now, the general obstacle for being like this seems to be a love of the things of the world. Across religious traditions, the attachment to possessions, to social status, to success is seen as a kind of spiritual trap. The Hebrew Bible warns, "Do not covet." Buddhism speaks of suffering born from attachment. Christianity teaches that it is more blessed to give than to receive. The common thread is clear. When we are tight-fisted, we diminish our freedom to love, to serve, to grow. Okay, So far so good, but how do we cultivate generosity? How do we get to be kinder people? Well, I've got a few tips. My first tip is to notice the generosity we see in other people. Simply to keep our eyes open and notice any small acts of consideration. Like the stranger some years ago, I remember once letting me cut into a long supermarket queue when I only had one item. At the time, I cynically assumed he was too embarrassed to stop me. Now I wonder whether it wasn't in fact an unprompted act of kindness. A second tip is to do with gratitude, which I suggest means stop yearning for what we lack and start appreciating for what we already have. Does this not get in the way? Then I believe generosity flows more naturally if we are more appreciative. It then becomes easier to share our things, our time, our encouragement. What we do doesn't have to be grand. When we bother to look, it's easy to notice people's needs. Mowing a neighbour's lawn when they're unwell, offering a lift to the station, properly listening, when someone shares their troubles. These are all gifts quietly given when we appreciate what we have ourselves. My third tip is about empathy, sensing how someone is in themselves. Empathy shows the value of our creating time for someone. For example, if you take your child for a walk, slow down past things like the pretty leaves, the flowers, the caterpillars. Never say hurry up. Once you read to them, don't skip or mind if it's the same story over again. The child's innocent delight in what we give is reward in itself. Even if sometimes our motives are mixed, even if part of us wants to be thought well of, still the act of giving can open us up to a higher spiritual sphere. Only the cynics believe that the only reason people help others is in order to feel good about themselves. Okay, tip number 4. My fourth tip is to try to remember the words, give and you will receive. Giving doesn't really entail sacrifice because we usually find we're getting more back than we put in. For example, a sense of usefulness, an uplift in mood, receiving thanks and appreciation. Now, my fifth tip to become more generous is actually to use discernment. I notice more women than men give to big street beggars. I don't know if you've noticed this. Is this because they are more naturally warm-hearted? Is it because they're more of a soft touch? I hesitate in being generous to rough sleepers because I do wonder if it would be merely feeding a drink or drug problem or encouraging an unnecessary habit of helplessness, of dependency. I'm saying that true generosity is not indiscriminate. It's not about handing over money thoughtlessly. If the person is asking you for money, you might question what the cash is really for. If we gave too much away, we would have too little for ourselves. Final tip. This is to mention trust. Trust that life is not a zero-sum game. Sharing does not impoverish us. If we live by high principles, everything, whether gain or loss, ultimately tends towards joy. So yes, I may still hesitate at the restaurant table, wondering whether to leave a tip, but I am learning why giving matters. It's about the posture of the heart, open, grateful, willing to give of itself, freely, quietly, and perhaps joyfully. In this video, I've been exploring generosity and the obstacles to it. I've made some suggestions how to cultivate generosity. If you've been interested, why not give me a like and offer a comment? It encourages YouTube to show this video to a wider audience. You may also want to click the link to How Do Humans Stop Eating Greedily? Cheerio!